Now coming to the process of controlling. Fine. There are 5 steps in the process of controlling. The first one being setting up of standards of performance, right? We've been talking of these standards of performance right from the definition of controlling. We said that controlling is a process of comparing the actual performance with the standard performance, and deviations, if there are any, have to be identified and the corrective action has to be taken. But first step in the process of controlling is to set up the standards of performance. Now, standards of performance are set up on the basis of the objectives which have been laid out in the process of planning, right? While setting up the standards, we must ensure that the standards that we are setting up, they are achievable. They are achievable under normal circumstances, right? Secondly, while setting these standards, you have to take into account the resources of an organization. कि organization के पास इतने resources हैं which will be required to achieve that kind of performance, right? Then the standards can be either quantitative or can be qualitative. Quantitative would mean if I say that you are supposed to be achieving a sales target of about 20,000 units, this is a quantitative standard. And qualitative standard would mean reducing labor turnover or improving the customer satisfaction, etc. So this is the process of setting up of a standards, right? After you have set up the standards of performance, second step would be measuring the actual performance. You have to measure the actual performance, and this should be done in a very reliable manner, okay, which is free from any kind of bias and prejudice. And we have to make sure that actual performance is measured preferably in the same units in which the standard performance has been laid out, right? If this will make the comparison very meaningful, and the performance must be measured regularly, that is at short periods or regularly at short intervals. Fine. अगर यहाँ पे हमने बोला है that let us say standard performance is in units of kgs, it is in number of days, कि कितने दिनों में आपको ये काम खत्म करना है. Fine. You were supposed to be finishing off a particular task, let's say in about 30 days. A normal person would be able to finish off this task in 30 days. So actual performance भी जो है ना, मुझे वो days में ही measure करनी पड़ेगी, so that my comparison becomes equal, right? Another example, you cannot compare if you have been given grades. आप अपनी 10th class की performance को 11th class की performance से compare नहीं कर सकते. Reason being that in your class 10th you have been given grades, right? Whereas in class 11th you have marks. So you cannot compare. I mean, if you've got an A1 grade, we give A1 for 90% to 100%. So a person who's got 99 will also get A1, a person who's got 99 will also get A1, 91 will A1, 95 also A1. But in class 11th you get marks, you don't get grades. So the two results are not comparable. Alright. So for anything to be compared, it is first and foremost requirement that they should be expressed in the same units. Right. After this, after you've measured the actual performance, next step would be that to compare your actual performance with the standard performance. You compare your actual performance with the standard performance. Now when you compare, there are likely, if your actual performance is same as the standard performance, you stop there. Fine. But then if there are deviations, they can either be positive deviations or they can be negative deviations. Now if there are positive deviations, that would demand a relook at the standards, meaning we'll have to set the standard a little higher for the next time so as to improve upon the quality, right? And if there is a negative deviation, then we have to look out for reasons as to what are the reasons for that deviation, and we have to take the necessary corrective action. Basically here we only try and find out the deviation. यहीं पे हम stop करेंगे कि whether it's a positive deviation or it's a negative deviation, right? Fourth step is analyzing those deviations. यहाँ पे हमने deviations find out की, यहाँ पे हम reasons locate करेंगे for those deviations. That why, what was the reason of this deviation? अगर ये negative deviation आई है तो क्यों आई है, right? अगर इस बार मेरी sales जो है कम हो गई है, क्यों कम हुई है? या तो ये था that those people they found the price to be very very high, or maybe the goods were not supplied in the market at the right time, or maybe they found the goods to be very, very substandard. Quality of the product was not up to the mark. So these are the reasons for deviations that we'll have to work out. Now there are two methods basically that we follow in this is, one is management by exception and the other one is critical point control. Basically they say that if you try and control everything, you'll end up controlling nothing. You try and control everything, you'll end up controlling nothing. So in case of management by exception, they say that if the deviation, आप जब स्टैंडर्ड परफॉर्मेंस सेट करते हो ना, तो हम एक प्लस माइनस वो लेते हैं कि विद एक रेंज सेटअप करते हैं कि इतनी अगर डिविएशन आएगी, दैट इज 0 to लेट्स से 1.5, 0 to 1.5, दिस इज अ नॉर्मल रेंज ऑफ डिविएशन प्लस माइनस, सो दिस इज टू बी इग्नोर्ड, राइट, नथिंग इज टू बी डन अबाउट इट, इट्स नॉर्मल. तो अगर आपका विद इन द एक्सेप्टेबल रेंज है डिविएशन, नथिंग इज टू डन अबाउट इट एंड वील प्रोसीड एज पर द प्लान. क्लियर? बट इफ योर डिविएशन exceeds the acceptable range, acceptable range से बाहर चला जाता है, then a necessary action has to be taken to rectify that deviation. This is called as management by exception. Exceptionally high हो जाएगी अगर deviation, then you have to take the necessary corrective action. For example, I'll just read this example from the book that's given in the book. If the cost of production increases by 2 rupees, it can be ignored if the total cost is 20,000. Okay, but if it increases by 10%, which means rupees 2,000, or if it increases by 2%, which means 400 rupees, then this is something which is not acceptable and has to be taken into account. A corrective action has to be taken. The second method here is critical point control, right? Here we identify the key result areas, KRAs. We identify the key result areas. That means the performance in these particular areas is very important for the organization, right? And an organization cannot succeed. An organization cannot succeed until and unless it performs well in these areas, right? We have to identify our key result areas. And why do we do this? Why do we identify the key result areas? Because it is going to be very, very costly affair. अगर हम हर एक डिपार्टमेंट का छोटी सी छोटी सब डिपार्टमेंट का भी अगर हम एनालाइज करने लगेंगे, कंपेयर देयर एक्चुअल परफॉर्मेंस विद देयर स्टैंडर्ड परफॉर्मेंस, एंड इट्स गोना turn out to be very expensive affair, very costly affair, and as well as very time consuming affair. So we only identify those key result areas which are critical points and which are critical for the success of an organization. And if anything goes wrong in these particular areas, the whole organization is going to suffer, right? For example, if it's a manufacturing organization, an increase of 10% in the cost of production is more critical than increase of 20% in your postal charges. उसको postal charges से इतना फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा जितना कि cost of production से पड़ेगा. But if it is a courier company, then an increase in the postal charges is going to be very, very critical. So you have to identify the critical areas, meaning the success of that particular area is really going to affect the whole organization, right? And we only work on those areas. Last step in the process of controlling is taking corrective action. यहाँ पे हमने deviations analyze कर लिए, उनके reasons find out कर लिए. Here we decide that what is the corrective action that we plan to take. I have taken an example here. I said that the sale of a particular product has dropped drastically, right? The reason for the deviation was defective raw material. The raw material that was supplied to us was not of good quality. As a result, the final product also that we manufactured did not turn out to be of a good quality, right? So the corrective action that we've taken is we have changed our supplier and we have changed the quality of the material used, right? So these are the 5 steps: setting up of the standards, measuring of the actual performance, comparing the actual with standard, analyzing deviations, and last is taking corrective action.